I'd like to take a moment to talk about sex addiction. I don't know why, it's just on my mind. Let me start by saying that I don't have sex addiction, not that I'm aware of. I'd be having a lot more sex. I don't know much about it. What I do know about it is basically from 3 friends of mine who have suffered with it. And, there was some talk about it in the press when, Michael Douglas came out with his sex addiction issue. So I really don't know much about it, and please forgive me. I'm just talking, but it's really interesting. Oh, and I do know about it from Dr. Drew's Celebrity Rehab. And I know people talk so much shit about Dr. Drew. I love Dr. Drew, and I thought that was actually an excellent education on sex addiction because I really did not know anything about it. I mean, I guess maybe for me, maybe in general, people seem to think, "Oh, it's a slutty person who will stick it in anywhere," like, you kind of hear there was Tiger Woods. I mean, I guess he came out and said he had a problem, and boy, he sure acted like someone with a problem. I don't think people are particularly, sympathetic to somebody who has lots of sex. And it doesn't quite manifest itself in ways that uh, drug addiction does or alcoholism. I mean, I guess the person can catch things, but people who don't have sex addiction can catch things from sex. And there aren't, you don't necessarily see people with sex addiction who are hobbling around, suffering from the physical effects of this addiction. And you could say the same thing with with gambling addiction. You don't get gambling-itis or anything from it, but obviously suffer major consequences. But so I have 3 different friends who I think have or had sex addiction. And what was interesting about it is that they manifested in very different ways. Like, the first person I knew who I suspected had it, and no, I'm not a medical professional, it kind of came out suddenly. We didn't know about it. She just seemed, this was back in college, and she seemed, basically like the rest of us. Nothing particularly unusual about her. And it sort of came out suddenly one night that she was having a lot of sex with strangers. And I think the fact that it was a secret is kind of a red flag. And it sort of came out suddenly, I think, when we were drinking or something. And she was talking about these various people that she had had sex with and kind of risky sounding individuals, people she didn't really know. Obviously, we didn't know them. They weren't like a part of her life. And I think what really freaked me out is when she said she had sex with a 50-year-old that she met at like some jazz club. And there was an aspect of it where she was doing it to please people. She was looking for attention and approval, and, giving these random dudes sex would somehow garner their approval, at least temporarily, which is so odd to me to want. I mean, I'm in a very much an approval seeker, but and I do want strangers' approval, but I can't imagine having sex with them right off the bat. Um, I won't go that far. I want approval, but I'm not gonna work that hard for it. And I don't know, that just it freaked me out. And then we kinda never heard about it again. I mean, she could still be doing that stuff now. In fact, I had to unfollow her. We were Facebook friends. Not that I'm on Facebook a lot, but I had to unfollow. She was one of the first people I unfollowed. I didn't wanna unfriend her, but I couldn't look at her crap anymore because I have never seen anyone so desperate for attention. And she would get it. People were willing to give it to her. Um you could say she's beloved, and she's got lots of followers and a lot of people who buy her bullshit. but it just never seems to be enough for her. She's always desperate for attention. Now, usually when I unfriend or unfollow, it's because we have some sort of ideological difference, but that just shows you how bad she was, that we were, very much in sync in many ways, and I liked her in so many ways, but I just couldn't deal with her constant ploys for attention on Facebook. So, I mean, I would imagine if she's still so attention thirsty, I wouldn't be shocked if she's still engaged in risky sexual behavior. So, but here and that was the other thing about her sex addiction. Yeah, it was for attention, but the the main thing for her was that she said it turned her mind off. When she was having sex, it was the only time that her mind stopped. And as someone who is very anxious a lot of the time, I think I'm a little bit better now, but through most of my life, I've been extremely anxious. Yeah, you want those moments where your mind stops. And so it really was a physical amelioration of her emotional distress. She needed that she needed that moment of quiet time, even though she's in the middle of intercourse. She needed that time for her mind to be still, and she only was able to get it during sex. And I mean, as someone who's anxious and whose mind is running a lot, that's tough. I hope she found other ways to quiet her mind. So I'm not really in contact with her, and I don't know really what's happening in her life, so I don't know. She could still be doing it for all I know. And then the second person I knew who had a sex addiction, it was pretty obvious from the get-go. And it started in college. He he's still one of my best friends. He discovered the internet and was meeting people. I think freshman year, let's see, I was a year older than him, so he came when I was his freshman year when I was when I was a sophomore, and he was bi at that time, and I don't wanna come off biphobic or bi erasing, but he started out with, "Oh, I'm bi," and then by junior year, he was gay as all outdoors. And so he had discovered the usefulness of the internet in finding people. I don't even know how he had the time. It seemed like he was constantly talking to guys online, and he was meeting them, and he was always like, it seemed almost every night of the week he was going, because we were in New York. We were in the suburbs of New York in Westchester, so he would be going into the city a lot of the time to meet these people he had met online, and so he was always going into the city several nights a week, and it was always a new person, and he was insatiable, and I don't know if he I mean, I think it was pretty obvious back then. He wasn't like, "Gee, I love sex. Sex is great. I can't get enough of it." It was like, I have, it was sex was sort of a method of getting to be close to people, I guess. So, meeting guys, and they were all from what I could tell, they were all horrible. Horrible people who were not particularly nice to him, not treating him well. And it would be like one night stands, because I don't think he would ever he didn't even have a friend with benefits, really. It was just, one and done, one and done, one and done. And he would have these horrible stories about how they were treating him and talking to him, and he's a person of color. And so, it was all these like problematic people who I guess thought it would be, exotic to be with some brown boy, and so they would call him, like, darky, and, just like, oh, just awfulness, and he just kept going, and this was, like, years. It was definitely, I would say his junior year, senior year, probably sometime after that. and he was in threesome. I mean, this was just what I knew. There was probably so much that I didn't even know about, because it was like a job. He devoted hours to it, and he spent so much time. He was always meeting people. And if he ever had any, caught anything, I don't know. I think he was generally pretty safe. So, but I don't know. I can't say for sure. So there was definitely this please love me, please love me. You over there, you love me, And definitely he had problems with his parents, problems with his father, it was definitely father issues. And then he finally started to see a therapist, and it all came to a screeching halt, which was great. It was kind of amazing how fast it stopped. He was still in New York. I don't know. I mean, he's still in New York now, but like maybe a couple years after college, it finally stopped. And I don't know, maybe he redirected his needs in other down other avenues. I'm not really sure how one can quit so suddenly. But, yeah, it was yeah, unlike my first friend where the sex was literally a drug that would help her function in a way, for him, it was definitely, please love me, maybe you'll love me, maybe this guy will love me, you can love me." And, I forgot what I was gonna say. Anyway, so that was some time ago, and now he's back at it. Suddenly he's relapsed, and it's really weird. I don't know what caused it. I don't, because he was celibate, I think. He was, like, untouched by human hands for, like, a long time, and then eventually, I mean, he was completely shut off, and then it was like, okay, he was dating some here and there, a little dating, and now it is kind of like a relapse where understandably, he didn't wanna be a monk forever, and so he was, like, going back online and meeting people for sex, and then it got weird again. And even into the pandemic, into quarantine, he was still kind of meeting people. I think he sort of stopped now, but I think once, if it ever becomes safe again, I think he's gonna be back at it because I think it unleashed something again. And once again, it's these people who are not so great for him. He really seems to like men who are taken, men with partners. Um, he's joining threesomes and joining, there was some guy who was married to a woman that he seemed to get emotionally involved with. And when I say emotionally involved, I don't think the guy was emotionally involved, but I think he got attached to the guy and seemed to think that there was something real going on between them and wouldn't hear otherwise. And so, yeah, and it's that, well, we'll get to my next friend in a minute, but there was that thing of he would say, "Well, I'm done. I'm not talking to so and so ever again. Oh, that guy's terrible. It's over." And then, yeah, "Oh, well, I went back to so and so's house today." You know, they always drop the bomb like, "Oh yeah, like that person I swore up and down I'd never see again and cut off and blocked from all social media. Well, I just came back from his house." Like it's which for me is very frustrating when people say they're gonna do one thing and then they go and do the complete opposite thing. Um, so it's a compulsion where, they wanna stop, they say they're gonna stop, and then they can't stop. If that's not addiction, I don't know what is. And yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Honestly, I haven't talked to him very much lately, which is the reason why. One of the reasons why is kind of funny because this next person I'm going to mention, I came to the realization that I think she had a sex addiction. And I sort of mentioned to him, "Gee, I'm not looking forward to it, but I think I have to tell someone they have a sex addiction." And I don't know if he thought I was talking about him or what, but I think he definitely got in his feels because he told me he essentially tried to shame me out of doing it. Even though it was so clear I wasn't talking about him, but maybe, it triggered something in him because, I think he knows he has an issue and he's relapsing. And so he didn't want me to intervene in someone else's issue. I've never said to him, "I think you have a sex addiction," because I think it was pretty obvious. I mean, he got help for it. Um, and I wasn't he was treating it like I was gonna, like, somehow treat the person for their sex addiction myself. No, I was literally just gonna, not intervention, but say, sit him down and say, "I think I have to tell you that you have a problem. I believe you have a problem." So, it's kind of funny, and so, it's funny because he wants to give unsolicited advice to everyone at all times about all things, so for him to try to, like, shame me out of making a legitimate, statement to somebody that could potentially save their life, he wanted me to not do that, whereas he can just say and do whatever he wants. So I was kinda like, "You know what? Yeah, I'm good." So I haven't said much to him since then. He's talked to me a little bit since. He's got his obsession with people who are not like him, you know? I don't think he feels very good about himself, and so he's always sending me pictures of people. He's always, screenshotting people's Instagrams and sending pictures to me and wanting to deride them, but really it's people he wants to be, they're all thin and pretty and rich and all that stuff, and they have relationships, and he wants me to join in with this, "Oh, aren't they the worst?" And I'm kind of like, "But that's who you wanna be." So I can't really get into that, but he wants to sort of pull me into that kinda stuff, and I'm like, you have fun." So the 3rd person, I just kind of came to the realization recently that I think they have an issue, and I did say something about it. The other 2 people, I did not say anything about, because 'cause I'm not really that person who goes and announces to people their problems. I tend to leave it alone, let them sort through it themselves, and, usually they kind of know there's an issue. But I think this friend of mine legitimately had no idea she had an issue, and I didn't realize she had an issue. So basically, she's had an interesting background. She came out in college. First she said she was bi, and once again, I'm not bi erasing because, I'm definitely on the queer spectrum myself. So, and I'm not, somewhere in the middle. So, I'm not saying that that's not a legitimate thing to be. But she came out as bi, but here's the thing, she ended up being bi with a vengeance. So she was bi, but, I was sort of thinking, "Okay, she's making her way to gay town," and, because it was hard for her just to even say she was bi. And so she kind of dabbled, she had one girlfriend. Oh, yeah, that was the other thing about the number 2. He's never really had a relationship, like, literally never. And I'm not like, it's not the worst thing in the world not to have a relationship, but kind of at this point, maybe you'd have something? What he did have was a guy who was, I guess you could kind of call a fuck buddy. He managed in all this fucking around, he managed to have a fuck buddy, one, and it was a long time ago. It was in college. And he man, you'd think he was in love. It was, they were the Rhett and Scarlet of New York City. I mean, and all I think it might have lasted 3 weeks or something. I think they snuggled once and he was done. He was gone. And the thing is he's still in contact with that guy. That guy got corona and he was telling me all about it. I'm like, "That guy from college that you like he let you sleep over one night? Like, we're still keeping up with him?" So, anyway, so yeah, he did have one quote relationship. Well, I'll give him that. So this number 3, she did have kind of a girlfriend. She described it as a girlfriend. I don't know if that was the reality of the situation, but she had met I wanna say she met her online. I'm not sure. And they kind of dated for like a minute, and I think they had sex once, maybe twice, and the woman stank. That was a big thing. The woman stank, and it didn't work out, and she never dated again. No, just kidding. She but she, like, never she didn't have a girlfriend after that for, like, a long time. She finally went online and met a woman, was it last year? And, like, I think on the first date, they had sex. I mean, it was a long time coming. She had been, sort of untouched by woman for a long time. And so, like, the first day they had sex, and maybe they met like a couple more times. And then the woman said, like, gee, I'm really sick right now. I don't think I can see you. And then, like, they never, and then it was over. I shouldn't laugh. Um, I'm not naming names. I know I'm saying all this stuff, but, they're never gonna know that I'm talking. And so yeah, and then, like, the woman was too sick, I guess, to date, but then she saw the woman when she was out one day, like, out with friends, which is so awful. And, but here's the thing, while she seemed to be, lesbianic as anything, one day she went on, like, Craigslist back when Craigslist still had, hookups and stuff, and she, like, started meeting men, and then it turned into lots of men, and it was like a running rotation of men. So many men, and it was like and I didn't wanna be like, "What? Like, aren't you a lesbian?" Like, I wasn't gonna, like, make a big deal out of it or anything, but apparently her own friends, in her town were like, "Aren't you gay?" No one saw that coming. So I guess she's as bi as anything, because man, she was hitting the men like nobody's business. And, and it was just, one hookup after the next, and the thing was, she was always saying to me, "Oh, the sex was awful. Oh, the sex was bad. Oh, he couldn't do this. Oh, he wouldn't do that." They expected me to blow them, but they wouldn't do me back. And, it was just like one horrible, selfish, bad lover after the next. Can't believe I used the word lover. What am I, 80? And it was just all bad sex. And then there was this one guy who was married, and she met him on like a swingers app. And so it was fully well known he was married. It wasn't a secret or anything. And man, she said recently that that was like 2, 3 years ago. I didn't realize it had been so long. And so she had sort of a well, I wouldn't I'm hard pressed to use the word relationship, but she had an ongoing thing with that guy. And, she did seem attached, and she said, "Oh, we text every day." And it's like, is he texting in front of his wife? That's gotta be so awkward. And I'm not judging the married thing necessarily, because I have my own drama in that regard, um, but she was still fucking, 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 just ran it, it was this like list of names, and I would always be like, wait, which one is John again? Wait, which one is Al again? Which one, and like, cause it was just always these names, these first names that she'd be throwing out there. And I'm like, I don't remember who's Bill is, and I don't know who John, like, because yeah, she would have like sort of a one sentence description of each one. Oh, Al is the one who has two ex-wives, and Bill is the one who's from Chicago who sucks at sex. So then again, they all did. And and so something would go wrong with these guys, and she would say, I'm done. I'm never doing it again. Oh yeah. And then she went on So she started out with Craigslist, and then she went to Adult Friend Finder, which unfortunately was, um, my recommendation to her, which I regret immensely. Um, so, she would say, "I'm done with Craigslist. I'm off Craigslist. It's over. I'm never doing it again." And her thing always was, "I'm gonna focus on myself. I'm focusing on myself." So she would have a bad experience. The guy treated her badly. The guy would ghost her. The guy was bad at sex, and it would be, I'm so upset, and I can't believe I opened myself up to this guy. It's over. I'm done. I'm focusing on myself." And then there's that secretive stuff again where she would declare that she was done, and then I wouldn't talk to her maybe for a few weeks, or she wouldn't, reach out for a few weeks, and then I'd be talking to her again, and she'd say, "Oh, yeah, I just came back from Al's house." And the first question was, "Al who?" And then the second question was, "Oh." Well, I wasn't so bad. I wasn't always like, "Didn't you say we're never gonna be, such and such, go on that side again or focus on yourself, blah, blah, blah." But, it was kind of like, how did that come about?" And, you know like any good do girl, they keep your number, and when they're ready for some more, they text, and she comes a running, no matter what promises she made to herself, to God, to anyone else. And so she was always accessible and available. And I don't know all the details because she sort of kept it from me, but I feel like she was kind of trying to be more than a sex partner for these people. And I mean, I think once again, it was that approval because she certainly wasn't getting anything out of the sex. It was definitely this emotional need for approval, for validation from men in particular. She doesn't seem to be that way for women. It's a man thing. And once again, you've got somebody who's got father issues. Um, and I guess these men are giving her, or she's hoping to get the validation from these men that she's not getting from her father, who's still disapproving of her. It's funny because her parents, I don't think her parents know she's hooking up with guys. I think they think she's firmly lesbian, and they disapprove. If only they knew how much dick she was getting, maybe their relationship would be better. But but yeah, it's that thing that's that validation. You need that validation, um and the secretiveness that's concerning, and there's that I'm going to stop, and then they can't stop. And I was, thinking about it cuz I mean, it was really bugging me. And it sort of hit me suddenly like, "Oh my god, she has a problem." I don't know why it didn't occur to me years ago when she started, but, you know, she's got a problem. If there's someone who's announcing every so often that they're gonna stop something and then they secretly return to it and can't stop it, that's a problem. I don't care if it's gambling, sex, drugs, whatever, alcohol, there's a problem there. And so that's what I bit the bullet and said, "Okay, I'm gonna say something." I didn't know how she was gonna take it. I'm so glad to say she took it very well, and she was very open to it. And she didn't get mad, she didn't deny it. She said, "That makes a lot of sense." And she scheduled an appointment with her therapist the next day. And that was great, and I'm very relieved. The thing is, well, it's an addiction. So she's still very much into it. I mean, I it's still an issue. Oh, and the other thing was that made me realize there's an issue here is she kept endangering herself. It was revealed to me, after a couple of years of doing this, she said, "Oh, by the way, I haven't been using condoms." "Why?" I asked, and she said, "Well, the guys didn't want to." So she was so determined for their approval and to please them that she would go without condoms for all these people. She wouldn't press the issue at all, so that they would like her. And she caught a bunch of stuff, some weird stuff too, like, not like your normal gonorrhea and whatever. I mean, it was like stuff I had never heard of. And not that I don't have experience in STIs, I'm glad to say, but um I know about them, I pay attention, but I mean, this was like parasites and I don't even stuff I'd never even heard of. And oh God. Ugh, ugh, I want to think about it. Weird stuff, weird exotic things she was catching. And over, it seemed to be happening over and over because 'cause there was that thing again where she would catch something and say, "Oh, this is God's way of telling me that I'm doing the wrong thing and this is so bad and I'm never going to do it again and I'm done. I'm focusing on myself." And then she would A, go back to these guys, B, not use condoms again, C, catch shit again, and then go through the whole song and dance and blah, blah, blah. Luckily, she's never caught anything permanent. I don't think, God, knock on wood. Oops, sorry, I scared the dog. Um, God willing, hopefully she doesn't catch anything else because she's definitely putting herself out there at risk. So I think at the beginning of the pandemic or quarantine, she was focusing on herself and not talking to anyone and blah de blah blah blah. Oh, and the married guy she was talking to, he thank God for his wife, he got a divorce. And so she and the guy had decided that they were going to keep talking, and then it sort of ramped up a little bit, and they had decided they were gonna be monogamous. They were gonna date, and they were gonna be monogamous. Now, why she would think that a guy who openly had sex outside of his marriage was gonna suddenly be monogamous with her, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what that impression came from. I don't know why he agreed to it. I mean, if I was wanting to sleep around and I had just gotten out of a marriage, I would not be settling down with some hookup or whatever, but whatevs. So they were sort of talking and stuff. And then, like, one day she messages me out of the blue and says, "Oh my God, I caught, I couldn't even tell you the name of it. I don't know where she finds these STIs. They're not the name brand STDs we all know. It's some weird shit that I've never heard of." So she had her usual such and such and the thingy thing, OSIS, and um, and she said, "Oh, it's because I had hooked up with this guy. I don't know, let's call him Dan." And you know, and I'm like, "But weren't you talking to the formerly married guy? Like, weren't you guys like kind of together?" "Oh yeah. Um, well, I hadn't heard from Dan in a long time, and so he texted me and said, we should hang out or something, and I said yes, and then she proceeded to have sex with him without. Oh, you know what? Here's the thing. She said that they were using a condom, but like it fell off or something. But I'm guessing he kept going even though it fell off or whatever. And so she said that he's the one who gave it to her. And I'm thinking, probably the married guy or formerly married guy. I mean, it very well could be because ain't no way that guy is being monogamous to her. Could be either one of them. So she slept with both of them very close to each other. I don't know, within a week or something, maybe even a few days. And so she caught something and she did the right thing, the respectable thing. She told both of them that she had unprotected sex and had caught such and you should get tested. And so both guys stopped talking to her. The thing is, and I was like, okay, so you really liked this guy who was married and you guys were still in contact. I think he's the only one that she kept in contact with long term. However, these other guys sort of randomly come back and she's just like, "Okay," like she's not like, "Nah, I'm done with you." No, whenever they ask, she comes a running. But he was the one that she seemed to actively keep in contact with long term, and it seemed like she really liked him, but she was perfectly okay with, quote, cheating on him. But it turns out that part of the reason why she did cheat on him was because he would just kind of, I didn't know this before, but he would just kind of disappear on her. He would just sort of not respond to her and ghost her for a while, weeks at a time. And so she would, I guess, understandably, she would go look for that approval, that attention, that validation from someone else. And if some random person wanted to just contact her and get some, why wouldn't? Why would she tell him no? Because she needs that validation. And the way the married dude was treating her was not so great. So she was particularly susceptible, I guess, at one of these periods of non-communication to go running to someone else. And I mean, that's just more of the same behavior. And I can't be mad because, I think she has an addiction. So this is what addicted people do. They act addicted to the thing that they really need or want. And so she's just doing what she's going to do until somehow she's able to stop, until she stops herself. So, oh, I don't know. I mean, luckily we've got a pandemic. I hate to put it that way, but luckily we're in quarantine and it seems like she's observing the quarantine unlike some other people. And so she's not, well, see, as far as I know, she's not sleeping around, although she never tells me. I think she knows that, I don't know, maybe I'm judgmental or something, and so she doesn't tell me things until later. She could be sleeping around right now, and I don't know it, but it'll suddenly come out later on. Um, However, her addiction is sort of playing out in other ways that aren't so great because she decided to join Tinder. Because when you're getting over a sex addiction and you've quit, adult friend finder, what do? You go to the most popular hookup app available. So she joined Tinder like days ago and she's already been catfished. There were so many red flags and yeah. She matched with this profile. It was this, cute guy who was in the military, all these pictures of him in uniform. Unfortunately, the name was sort of obscured in all the pictures, so you can't really tell what his name is. And cute pictures, whatever. And I think she was just so happy that someone was paying attention to her. And he was really giving her the good lines. I mean, he was really laying it on thick. And I wish I had my phone here because she showed me a couple of the messages. I mean, they were kind of intense, especially for the knowing someone for a few days. But it was all this talk about how, your looks aren't important. It's what's inside. And, you have the qualities of someone that I wanna spend the rest of my life with, small talk when you first meet someone online. And, she fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And so this person was saying, "Well, yeah, I'm from your town, but I'm stationed in Germany, and I'll be back in December." Meanwhile, his profile says he's 1 mile away. And I was saying to her, on Tinder, they match you with people who are in your immediate vicinity. They don't match you with people in Germany, even if they say they live in your town. And it literally says he's a mile away from you. You could probably like walk to him right now. But no, he said he was in Germany and he couldn't talk and he couldn't make a call. He couldn't afford the call and, blah, 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 all these reasons why they couldn't be in contact. And I'm like, well, you're on this app or, they were on WhatsApp. You can call, you can video, you can do all that stuff for free. And he was like evading her And oh, and then on top of that, his like English wasn't very good. Even though he was saying all this wonderful stuff, it was like wacky grammar and just oddly sounding. Not, Mr. America Army native English speaker kind of talk. But she didn't care. Red flags galore. She was getting what she wanted. She was getting this attention. She was getting emotionally involved with this person, this avatar after a few days because they were giving her exactly what she needed and she didn't even have to have sex with them. Thank God he wasn't asking for money or anything cuz I'm sure he would have had whatever he had asked for. She didn't care. She was getting her thing. She was getting what she wanted. And she didn't even have to have bad sex. And so I finally was like, okay, this is an issue. I think I think there's something wrong here. And finally, she acknowledged that, oh, yeah, yeah, he's totally fake. I think he's really fake. And he wouldn't talk to her. He wouldn't video chat with her or anything like that. And so finally, she cut it off. She cursed him out and ended things and reported him and stuff. And that's all fine and good, but the focus for her was what a bad man, he did these bad things, he should be ashamed of himself, which is true, but I don't think she took anything away from it like, "Gee, I really I really let myself fall for that in spite of all the evidence to the contrary that this guy was not real." Um, so it's all his fault, and that's true. But that doesn't it's not gonna prevent this from happening to her again. She could be getting catfished right now for all we know. Um, if it weren't for me, if it weren't for my intervention, I seem to have to do that a lot. Eh, she's gonna fall for it again, and if it does happen, hopefully next time she tells me about it, and so if I can sort of check it out for her and make sure everything's on the up and up, because otherwise, if someone gives her some attention, she's done for. And, I don't know about the other addicted friends. I think things have kind of quieted down with the pandemic. Although, like I said, number 2, he still sort of sees people. He was, like, going for walks with people, but not necessarily hooking up with him. I say all of this is almost pure conjecture because when these people have since these people have these addictions, they don't necessarily tell you everything they're doing, but from what I understand, he's not hooking up with people, um, which is great. I'm so glad that they're being safe. But, as number 3 can illustrate to you, the addiction can still continue in other ways. And, really it's an addiction not to sex so much, but addiction to the attention, or as Dr. Drew would put it, the love addiction. It's the addiction for love, to love, and the need to have love or something close to it. And so I'm gonna have to keep an eye. I don't know. I mean, not that it's my job necessarily, but someone will have to keep an eye on what's going on with her because she's still vulnerable to the addiction in other ways, even if it's not physical. Luckily, she's not gonna catch anything on Tinder just talking. But who knows? I mean, her money could be in danger, or they could really, they could ask her for anything, and she'll probably give it to him if they say the right things. She could be given, nude pictures and oh my god. Speaking of, I'm gonna tell all the tea. So I have a dear friend who's my waxing lady, and I hadn't seen her for a long time, but I did see her last week, and she's talking to somebody. So she's here in my town. She's talking to a guy, it turns out, who lives in Seattle. And he travels a lot. So currently he's in Idaho. but he's always traveling around the country, but, like, never around here. As far as I know, he's who he says he is. I think she has ample evidence, I think they video chat and talk on the phone and stuff like that, so I'm not concerned that, like, he's not who he says he is. I'm a little weirded out by the idea that she, like, purposely found she's desperately wants to have a relationship, but she sought someone out that she knew was far away. I don't know what that's about. I guess it suggests that she's not quite ready for the closeness that she thinks she is, to set yourself up for that by, I mean, she basically set herself up. She pursued somebody who's at the other side of the country and who's always traveling. So even if she did move to him, he would be out of town constantly. Um So they were supposed to meet. They've had, like, lots of plans to meet, but obviously the pandemic has hindered that. But there was one time when they what happened? Somehow he was under the impression they were gonna meet on a specific day in, like, Florida for some reason, and she somehow didn't get the message, didn't know that that's what he was expecting. There was some miscommunication, and so the day of that they were supposed to meet, she, obviously didn't show because she didn't know about it, and he was, like, flipping out and sending her all these messages and I guess calling her and saying, "I know I'm tired, I'm done. I don't wanna talk to you anymore. You're not taking this seriously." And she was very upset, obviously, and oh, and by the way, they've been talking since, like, April. This is in, online dating talking terms, this is a long time. This is pretty substantial online relationship at this point. And so he was upset saying, "I never want to talk to you again." Essentially, I guess he was breaking up with her. And she was like, "No, no, no, please don't. Tell me, what can I do? Blah, blah, blah." He said, "Oh, well," as he twirled his mustache, he said, "Well, I'll keep talking to you if you send me a nude picture." And she was more than happy to comply. She sent pictures. Oh boy, did she send pictures. She didn't show me the pictures, but she described the pictures, and they were very interesting. Basically, she got a pelvic exam via pictures. And because in many ways, she's kind of innocent. She's sort of the same age as I am. But, like, she hasn't had a lot of sexual partners, and certainly up to this point, I don't think they were talking about sex as at least explicitly, and she was not this was, like, her first nude picture she was sending to him, and so, yeah, I thought everything else actually sounds okay, in this climate that we live in right now, it's kind of the best one could hope for in this situation, but that was such a red flag to me that he manipulated her into giving very explicit nude pictures. I think she said all of them for all the pictures you can't see her face. So thank God for that. If something goes wrong and he starts publishing them, they won't necessarily be traceable to her. But it was ooh, that was concerning that I mean, I understand that feeling where you kind of will do anything to keep somebody and you'll, even against your own better judgment. And so he had her in a difficult spot and he knew that she was going to do something uncomfortable for herself and beneficial to him in order to get out of that spot. And she sure did it. And I guess she still is. Like now that she broke the seal, she can't seem to stop sending nude pics. But I mean, oh, you gotta be so careful with these people. It's like even and I'm not like against online dating and stuff, but like it's amazing how much damage people can do without you even being in the same room as them. So, I'm not saying she has a sex addiction or anything like that, but like you can still manifest symptoms of, your issues even online. So, Yeah, I mean, I've had, like, sort of weird issues, weird online stuff like that, but, like, yeah, I've definitely had my own issues, but I will say not very many, and I haven't, like, lost anything devastating, I haven't sent money to anyone. The most, like, kind of devastating situation I had was in high school, um, and when I mean devastating, I mean, like, sort of emotionally it was sort of emotionally traumatizing, but I learned and I kinda got it out of the way early, um not that I sit around thinking about that situation and I'm always trying to avoid similar "Whoa, remember what happened in high school?" No, I'm not like but it was a good lesson to learn and it sort of inoculated me against, like, complete foolery online. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna go into it right now. I'll just talk shit about my friends and tell all their business, not my own. Maybe someday, but, yeah, so I don't know, I just wanted to talk about that because these people be wilding out here. I'm not so much even talking about it for everyone else's sake, it's just kind of I don't know, maybe it's good for me to know, and maybe, hopefully, no one's watching this, but, maybe someday someone will gain something from this and recognize some of their own issues, and, it'll stop them from doing some harm. Not that, people make mistakes and there isn't much one can do that can ruin you forever. Um, it's just nice to avoid things, and sometimes things are unavoidable. I mean, I sometimes you just have to go through it to know not to do it again. I could tell you till I'm blue in the face not to do such and such, but sometimes you just have to do it yourself, and I mean, I certainly have situations where it's like and I even know, like, I keep banging my head against this wall and it hurts, and I know I should stop, but I can't seem to stop. I don't seem to want to stop right now, and though there will come a day when it finally hurts too much and I stop. But until that time, I'm just gonna keep doing this and hopefully not cause too much brain damage. And, it'll end eventually. I'll stop I'll get tired of it eventually, but until then, you won't be tired of it. Because if you try to stop and before you're tired of it, you're gonna keep wanting to go back. It's gonna draw you back in. So, I don't know, maybe these people need to get tired of being mistreated and catching weird viruses and parasites and God knows what on their cooch and, unfortunately, keep banging their heads against the wall until well, like with addiction, you hit rock bottom. They're not I guess they're not bottom yet. And so meanwhile, I'm gonna wring my hands and get frustrated and be angry, not to them, but be angry internally that they haven't hit rock bottom yet and realize what a disaster this is. And I'll just, talk about it online on a dark screen. It'll make me feel better at least. So, anyway, y'all have a nice day. Bye-bye.